Alrighty. I think everything's working here. I think everything is working. It says we've got one person. I know that's not true. Anyway, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you may happen to be. I am here smack dab in the middle, well, the coastal middle of California. About 2.5, 3 miles from the ocean, up in the hills, surrounded by critters and trees and stuff, just the way I like it. I hope you are in a similarly salubrious situation and that your Sunday is going well, unless you're in the antipodes, in which case it may be Monday already. I always have trouble figuring out how many hours difference that is to Australia and New Zealand. Anyway, doesn't really matter. It's a Sunday kind of feeling, and that's what really matters. Whether it's literally Sunday anymore where you are or not, it is a Sunday kind of feeling, whatever that might mean. I have no idea. Hi, I'm Tad. I will be here for the next hour, roughly. It is 2 minutes after the hour right now, so I will be here for at least the next 58 minutes. Chances are good. And yes, and I will be reading more River of Blue Fire tonight. And what else do I have to chat about? Just the usual, working on book stuff when I have a moment, when I can get some quiet thinking time. Splintered Sun, I'm going to be doing a little bit of touring, but it's in October, but it seems like it's mostly here on the West Coast. On the other hand, I count my blessings. I haven't done any touring in America for a while, period. So it's nice that people have decided that, maybe it'd be worth sending me out somewhere. One of these days, I'm going to, I hope, get to the South, which I still never toured. I've been to some conventions in the South. But I have, of course, as some of you may know, I have family heritage in the South. On my dad's side of the family, they are from Memphis, Tennessee. In fact, at one point in time, and this is true, they practically owned Memphis, Tennessee. That was long before my part of the family sprang into being, so I never benefited from any of this great wealth. And there was a lot of sort of Tennessee Williams secretiveness about what happened to the family fortune and all that kind of stuff. So, but it was my introduction to Southern life and Southern thought and things like that. So, which is not a criticism or a slight. Many of our greatest cultural traditions in America have come out of the American South. Many of our finest writers and musicians and, all kinds of other stuff has come out of the South. So I do feel a strong connection. Some of you may have noticed I used the word y'all without thinking about it very much, because my grandmother, Elizabeth Evans, was from Memphis. And even though she had spent the last 60, 70 years of her life on the West Coast, she never got rid of those Southern habits. In fact, she was kind of a Southern belle in a lot of ways. She was kind of your classic, she really literally would say things like, "Oh, that is just the sweetest thing anybody's ever done for me in my whole life." And this was like, if somebody handed her a canapé or picked up a napkin she'd dropped or something, she really had the whole bit. But they were genuinely wealthy and important. The house that her grandfather, I can't remember, grandfather maybe, anyway, built in Memphis on one of the main drags is, you can still find pictures of it. It's the Napoleon Hill House. It doesn't exist anymore, but you can find pictures. It was a god-awful, horrifying looking Gothic monstrosity. That's all I can say. It was a really weird looking house. And it was like right there on the main drag. And they had money, as I said. They had Tiffany windows. My grandmother dropped that bit of fact at one point, just sort of offhandedly, that I think they all went to a museum or something. She said when they left the house behind, or when the house was torn down finally, or whatever happened. And I mean, this will mean more to musicians than it does to anybody else. But she was telling me stories about how, when they would be young and go out to dance, and then some party or something, or a ballroom or whatever, and then when they still wanted to dance more afterwards, her father would go down to Beale Street and hire that nice as my grandmother would put it, that nice Mr. Handy and his band, and they would come back and we would roll up the carpets, and then we would just dance all night. And I was like, whoa, Grandma, slow down here. That nice Mr. Handy, is that by any chance W.C. Handy, the father of the blues? In fact, Beale Street Blues, commonly considered to be the first actual blues song. That nice Mr. Handy. Oh, I think that was his name, yes. And then later on, now his W.C. Handy, again, one of the most famous musical creators in American history. W.C. Handy's son became a very famous jazz trumpeter. And his grandson, who was also a musician, actually played Little League and Youth League and Babe Ruth League and stuff like that with me also, although I didn't know at the time that there was this family connection. So many strange and interesting stories. Some of them horrifying, I have to say. There are certain aspects of Southernism that I never vibed with. Anyway, so here we are. It is Sunday night. It is also, let us not forget, the birthday of an important man today. A man who's changed people's way of thinking, who has made whole categories of things that were previously considered to be impossible to imagine. Not only impossible, but actual. And it's his birthday today. And that man, of course, is Boy George, best known as the leader of Culture Club. Anyway, that said, happy birthday, boy. Happy birthday. That said, I will get on, I think, in the reading. But first, I'm going to check and see who has popped in tonight. And now that a few people are starting to show up. Okay. So, all right. Let me get which one I can read the best of. Cool. Okay, good. I see Tim Speckins. Hello, good to see you. I see Claudia. Hello. I see Tracy McClatchy. Yes, laugh out loud at infinite patience. Greetings all, she says. Justine Bax. Hello, Justine. Barban, good to see you as always. Mr. Mark Craigbaum, star of stage, screen, and television. Poet to the stars. Mr. Mark Craigbaum is there. Hello. Yeah, Justine reports it's Monday at 10 a.m., which presumably is in the distant antipodes. Tim Speckins asks, Canadaland book tour when? I would love to come back to Canada. I haven't been in Canada for years. I can't remember whether the last events I did were in Toronto or in Vancouver. Or Vancouver. So, but I'd love to come back to Canada. And maybe one of these days I can make it work. Kristen Rule is here. Hello, Kristen. Chris Van Dahl is also here. Hello, Chris. Good to see you. Susan Shamblin. Susan says, enjoyed what you talked about last night. I don't remember what I just... Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, you're talking about when I was talking about the approach that a genre writer has to take of being aware of how smart their readers are and how well steeped they are in this kind of fiction or this kind of literature. So yeah, good. Glad you enjoyed that. I mean, it's something I've been saying for years. It's one of my many, there's a good old-fashioned expression, one of my many hobby horses, one of those things that I just ride into the dirt. But I do believe it very strongly that you have to, especially with genre fiction, you have to take the proclivities of the audience in mind, and that it is not merely a process of writing a book, but it is writing a book that will work with your particular very clever audience who are always trying to be ahead of you. Anyway, so who else is here? Isaac. Hello, Isaac. Good to see you. I'm sorry you're not feeling well today. That sounds really unfun. And Emily, did I say hello to you yet? If not, I say it now. Hello, Emily. Good to see you. What else have we got here? Mr. Steve Pop. It was your grandfather's birthday, 137 years ago today. Oh, lovely. Anyway, well, wherever the old gentleman is now, and who knows, but I wish him the very best, and I send good thoughts. after him. Ray Weatherford. Hello, Ray. Good to see you. Medardo, mi amigo. Es un placer verte, como siempre. Isaac says, my grandmother Sally was born to the Hoovers, a wealthy family in turn of the century Los Angeles. Yeah, it's really weird to be on the fringe. We also had my maternal grandfather was not himself wealthy at all. That side of the family, we were, even back then, we're like fourth generation Californians, but all completely, just working folk. The salt of the earth, as they say. And but he worked for a very rich couple up in Burlingame, which is a city kind of halfway between where I am and San Francisco. I'm in this part of California. And they had a gigantic estate. And I remember going there to go see my great uncle and great aunt, who lived in a very large apartment over the many, many, many car garage that this family had, and seeing like literally, 2 or 3 different gardeners on huge riding mowers to keep this estate's lawns mowed. And I remember just thinking, like, this is just something I couldn't understand, what it would be like to live in a place like this. I mean, it felt like, Buckingham Palace or something. It was very strange. Anyway, so Isaac, no, I have never been to Logan, Utah. I have not. I confess it. I have been to Salt Lake City a few times, including arriving at Salt Lake City at 6 o'clock in the morning after driving for like 16 hours from California. And my friend and I, she was starting college at Wisconsin, at University of Wisconsin in Madison. So we decided just to drive out so she'd have her car. And so I had been driving hours and hours and hours. And finally, as we were coming into Utah and getting closer to Salt Lake City, I was so tired at this point because we had just literally driven all that distance, like, as I said, close to 16 hours. I was still driving, but I was literally having hallucinations. We were on the salt flats, which are pretty weird anyway. And as I'm driving across the salt flats, I'm literally seeing like gigantic spindly UFOs that looked like the spider robot from Johnny Quest. If you've ever seen pictures of that thing with the mechanical eyeball with spider legs. I was seeing things that looked like that, except they had lights dotted all over them. And I finally told my friend, you got to drive. I am completely hallucinating. And so I went to sleep, and she drove the last couple of hours or last hour or whatever it was. And as we pull into Salt Lake City in the morning, and again, like dawn, it was maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. As we're pulling into Salt Lake City, I kind of struggled up out of my sleep and was peering out the car window as we're driving through downtown Salt Lake City. And there were like 200 people out standing in line to picket a theater that was showing, I don't know, an R-rated movie or something. And I'm going, like, what are these people doing? It's like dawn. Who are they picketing for? I understand what they're picketing against, but who's getting this message at 6 o'clock in the morning, for God's sakes, on a weekend? Anyway, sorry. I will never forget that. It was such a weird day altogether, driving from San Francisco area to Salt Lake City and arriving just in time to see a picket line around a movie theater. Anyway, so, all right. I think I have done my due diligence here. I have said hello to all the lovely people that have checked in. And if you are watching but you have not been said hello to, that's probably because you didn't check in. Oh, look at it. I didn't see these before. My lovely dog, just before I came down here, my lovely dog, while I was talking dinner with daughter and wife, Lemon thought we were going to play. And I made the mistake of turning my attention away from her for a moment. And she biffed me on the side of on the side of the face with her clawed paw. So if I've got weird red marks on me, that's why. It's just another day in paradise, folks. Just another summer in Margaritaville. Anyway, excuse me, I am going to start reading since I have whiffled away and chuntered away a great deal of time. We are going back to the River of Blue Fire, the second Otherland volume. What has happened is Rini and Kabu and Orlando and Fredericks and this new cast of characters that they had just met when all of them had been brought together by the mysterious Mr. Sellers for a meeting in the Otherland sim universe, and specifically in the simulation world of a man and his wife named Atasco, who were then killed by, as we knew if we were reading the first book, by Dredd and several others who basically carried out a military strike on Atasco's island. But they managed to get out, and they have disappeared or dispersed. This is Rini and all the rest of them dispersed into the Otherland network. And Rini and Kabu have been separated by, they're on a river floating on, their boat had become a leaf when they passed through into this new sim world. Their leaf had become upset by a giant fish because they are teeny tiny in this world, smaller than insects, much smaller than insects. And then they had been picked out of the river, which again to them is like the size of the Grand Canyon, by these two people who they don't know much about yet. But these two people are flying in a dragonfly flying machine. And they have picked them up and put them into this flying machine with them, and that's where we are. So I'm just going back half a paragraph. The sky beyond the cockpit window was now a deep mauve. The trees were rapidly becoming monstrous vertical shadows. Rini closed her eyes, trying to make sense of it all. These people seemed to think that T4B and Martine and the rest were fine, that they'd just been knocked out of the simulation. But could that be true? And even if they could survive being killed here in the sim world, which Rini wasn't all that positive about, given what had happened to Singh, how could she and Kabu ever find them again? The whole grueling effort was already over, it seemed, with all Sellers' work gone for nothing. "What is this place?" she asked. "This simulation?" Cullen wagged his finger. Twilight rushed past the view screen. "You haven't told us who you are yet." Rini and Kabu exchanged glances. With all their other concerns, she and her companions had not had a chance to concoct a cover story in case of a meeting like this. She decided that half-truth was the best strategy. "My name is..." She struggled to recall the earlier alias. "Otepi. Irene Otepi. I was doing systems analysis for a man named Atasco." She paused, watching their rescuers for a reaction. "Do you know him?" "The anthropologist?" Lenora was checking readouts on the instrument panel. If she was hiding something, she was good at it. "Heard of him. Central American, South American, something." "South American," said Cullen. "Colombian, in fact. Saw him in an interview once." "What's he like?" Rini hesitated. "I didn't meet him. Something went wrong. I'm not sure what. His sim world, well, there was an uprising or something. We were all on a ship, and we just kept going." Rini suspected they were wondering why she hadn't simply dropped offline. It was a good question, and she couldn't think of an answer other than the bizarre truth. "It was all pretty crazy. Then we floated through to here, I guess. The ship turned into a leaf. The leaf got tipped over. You found us." Kabu had been watching her closely, and now he spoke in his most careful English. "I am Henry Wande," he said. "I am Ms. Otepi's student. How can we find our friends again?" Cullen turned to observe the baboon for a long moment before a looming tangle of branches jerked his gaze back to the view screen. "Why? Are you planning to stay online? Just go back through to this Atasco simulation or something?" Rini took a breath. There's something wrong with our own systems, I think. We can't go offline." Cullen whistled, impressed. "That's weird." "We'll get you fixed up at the Hive." Lenore said confidently. "Make it all better." Rini was less than certain, but said nothing. The dragonfly sped on through the darkening night. Orlando had one last dream before waking. A dim and fuzzy fragment in which a faceless child sat in a cold, dark room, pleading with him to stay and play a game. There was some kind of secret involved, something that must be kept from the grown-ups, but it all streamed away like wind-blown smoke as he awakened. Still, even though the events of the next minutes pushed it quickly from his mind, the feeling of foreboding it left took much longer to fade. In the first 2 bright moments, after opening his eyes, he thought he was paralyzed. His legs felt unattached and seemed to move aimlessly. He had very little feeling below a tight band around his waist. "Orlando?" The voice was familiar. The feeling of being in the world was less so. He squinted and turned toward the voice. "You're awake!" Frederick's face was very close. Orlando realized after a moment that it was his friend's arm he felt around his waist, and that Frederick's was holding on to the edge of the leaf while they both floated chest deep in the warm river. "Well, cheers and welcome to the party, sunshine." Sweet William, looking not unlike a wet black cockatoo, was clinging to the leaf edge a few yards away. "Does this mean he can swim now, so we don't have to keep dragging you two back on board every few minutes?" "Leave him alone," growled Fredericks. "He's really sick." "He's right," a woman's voice said. "Arguing is a waste of time." Orlando craned his neck. It felt as boneless as taffy to focus on the faces beyond Frederick's shoulder. 3 female Sims, the women named Quan Li, Florimel, and Martine, had clambered up to a higher part of the leaf and were holding fast to the slope. Florimel, who had spoken, looked back at him intently. "How are you?" Orlando shook his head. "I've felt better, but I've felt worse, too." A vibration shuddered the leaf. Orlando grabbed at Fredericks and reached for the leaf's edge with his other hand, his heart suddenly racing. After a moment, the vibration ceased. "I think we scraped on a root," Florimel said. "We are close enough to the bank that we should swim the rest of the way." "I don't think I can do it." Orlando hated to admit weakness, but there wasn't much he could hide from these folks, not after they'd been watching him flounder in and out of consciousness for however long it had been. "Don't worry, you pretty little head," Sweet William replied. "We'll just carry you on our backs all the way to the Emerald City or Mordor or whatever the hell it is we're going to. Isn't that how it works in these stories? Buddies till the end." "Oh, shut up," offered Fredericks. Orlando closed his eyes and concentrated on keeping his head above water. A few minutes later, the leaf shuddered again, then bumped to a halt, rocking in the gentle current. "We do not know how long this is going to remain snagged here," Florimel pointed out. "Let us head for the shore now. It is not far." "Everybody wants to be in charge, don't they?" Sweet William sighed theatrically. "Well, soonest muddled, soonest mended. Let's get on with it." He splashed free of the leaf and swam until he was level with Fredericks. Orlando wondered a little dreamily what William was doing, then was abruptly jerked away from the leaf by an arm around his neck and tumbled backward into the water. He thrashed, trying to get free. "Stop fighting, you prat," spluttered William, "or I will let you swim by yourself." When Orlando realized that the other was trying, in his idiosyncratic way, to help him to shore, he relaxed. William set out with a surprisingly powerful stroke. As Orlando floated backward, his chin in the crook of the death clown's arm, he watched the blue tropical sky overhead, wider than anything he had ever seen, and wondered if this dream was going to continue forever. "This locks so utterly," he thought. "Here I am in a place where I could be like everyone else, better than everyone else, but I'm still sick. But his muscles didn't feel as weak as they had at first, which was interesting. He made a couple of experimental kicks, just to see, and was rewarded by a wet snarl from Sweet William. You're knocking me off balance. Whatever you're doing, don't do it. Orlando relaxed, feeling a small pleasure at the returning responsiveness of his virtual flesh. A few moments later, William dragged him up onto the rounded stones of the beach, then stood over him. Sodden plumes draggled on his shoulders and head. Now, just wait there, hero boy, he said. Think good thoughts. I've got to go back and wrestle the blind lady onto shore. Orlando was more than content to lie in the warm sun and flex his fingers and toes, working up after a few minutes to arm and leg stretching. His lungs still hurt if he took anything but the shallowest breaths, and all his muscles ached, but he felt almost none of the slippery, disconnected dreaminess he had experienced since commandeering Itasco's royal barge. But a bit of internal darkness remained to trouble him, a shadow he could not quite name or clearly see. Something happened. I had a dream with Beazle in it, and some kind of little kid. It was troubling because it seemed meaningless, while at the same time something was whispering deep in his thoughts that it was all very meaningful indeed. Was I supposed to do something? Help someone? Another thought, slow to coalesce, but even more chilling. Was I almost dead? I went down into the dark. Was I dying? He opened his eyes to watch the rest of the group trudging ashore, Sweet William carrying Martine in his arms. He set her down beside Orlando with surprising tenderness. It was only as the others hunkered down in a small circle that Orlando suddenly realized that something else was wrong, too. Where are the others? Where's... For a moment he could not remember the names. Where's Renee and her friend? And the guy in the body armor? Quan Li shook her head, but said nothing, looking down at the stones of the beach. Gone, said Florimel. Perhaps drowned, perhaps washed up somewhere else. There was a false note in her matter-of-fact speech, something that might have been pain sternly repressed. We were all washed overboard. Those you see here were able to cling to the leaf. Your friend pulled you back and held your head above the water, which is why you are alive. Orlando turned to Fredericks. So take me to LawNet Live, Fredericks said defiantly. I wasn't going to let you drown just because you're an idiot. Something turned in Orlando's stomach. How many times had his friend saved his life recently? As if to underscore the question, Sweet William added, In fact, my duck, just before we tipped over, you stopped breathing for a bit. Flossie here gave you mouth-to-mouth. What's it? Florimel, not Flossie. She glowered at the bedraggled William. Anyone would have done the same. Thank you. Despite another debt of gratitude, Orlando wasn't sure how he felt about the fierce woman, and for the first time he realized the magnitude of their loss. Could we look for Renee and the others? I mean, what if they need help? Some of us aren't quite as perky because we didn't get a free ride, said William. Some of us are that tired we could lie down right here and sleep for a week. Orlando looked along the riverbank. From his shrunken perspective, it was a thing of huge brown arroyos and thin stretches of stony beach. The river, a vast stretch of green that seemed active as a storm-brushed sea, wound away into the distance. On the far side of the riverbank loomed the first of the forest trees, each one as vast as the world ash of Norse legend, tall as Jack's beanstalk. But more than just the size of things was puzzling. It's morning, he said. It was evening just a little while ago. Does the time jump around here? Arkidim, William laughed. Just because he had a nice nap while the rest of us did the dog paddle all night, he thinks time went all funny. Orlando felt sure that somewhere his real face was flushed pink. "Oh, I'm sorry." He snatched at something to say. "So, are we going to spend the night here? Do we need to make a fire or something?" Martine, who had been silent since William carried her ashore, abruptly sat up straight, her eyes wide. There is something." She brought her hands to her face, rubbing so hard Orlando feared she would hurt herself even through the tactors. "No, someone." Her mouth fell open and her face distorted, as though she silently screamed. She flung out a hand, pointing down the river course. "There! Someone is there!" All turned to follow her gesture. A short distance away stood a white, shrouded human figure. Excuse me. Cats! All turned to follow her gesture. A short distance away stood a white, shrouded human figure of their own size, looking down at something along the river's edge that was invisible from where they sat. Orlando struggled to get onto his feet, but was immediately struck by a wave of dizziness. "Orlando, don't!" Frederick scrambled up and took his arm. Orlando wavered and tried to take a step forward, but the weakness was too much. He swayed in place, trying to find his balance. Florimel was already walking swiftly toward the spot, picking her way over the uneven stones. Sweet William followed her. "Be careful," called Quan Li, then moved to take Martine's hand. The Frenchwoman's sim still gazed sightlessly, head turning slowly from side to side like a tracking dish, unable to lock onto a signal. As Orlando managed his first steps, inhibited more than helped by Frederick's insistence on propping him up, the white-cloaked form turned toward Florimel and William, as though realizing for the first time that there were others present. Orlando thought he saw a glint of eyes in the shadows of the hood. Then the figure vanished. Fredericks let out a breath. "Scanny! Did you see that? He just disappeared." "It's VR," panted Orlando. What did you expect? A puff of smoke?" Their two companions were kneeling over something that lay in one of the shallow backwaters of the river. At first, Orlando thought it was some kind of discarded machinery, but it was far too shiny to have been in the water long. When William and Florimel helped the machinery to sit up, Orlando suddenly recognized it. "Look who we have here!" William shouted. "It's Bang Bang the Malboy!" They helped T4B out of the water as Orlando tottered forward on Frederick's arm. An observer might have thought that two ancient and venerable celebrities were being introduced. "Are you okay?" Fredericks asked the warrior robot. Florimel began checking T4B in much the same way any accident victim might be checked, flexing joints, exploring for a pulse reading. Orlando wondered how much good that would do on a sim. "I mean, wow!" Fredericks took a deep breath. "We thought you were dead." "And what do we call you, anyway?" fluted William. "I forgot to ask. Is just T acceptable, or do you prefer Mr. 4B? T4B groaned and brought a spike-gauntleted hand up to his face. "Feel pure fan me. Fish ate me." He shook his head, and one of his helmet prongs almost poked Florimel in the eye. "Puked me up, too." He sighed. "Doing that again? Never." "It's not much, but it's home," Cullen declared. Rennie could see nothing but a sprinkle of dimly glowing lights before them. "Hold up!" Lenore's voice was sharp. "We got a bogey at 12:30 and closing." "What is it?" "One of those damned Quetzals, I think." Lenore scowled and turned to Rennie and Kabu. "Birds." "Hold tight." Cullen dropped the dragonfly into a steep dive. "Better still grab those belts and strap in. Rennie and Kabu fumbled their way into the crash belts hanging in the alcove. They fell for only seconds, then slowed so swiftly that Rini felt she was being squeezed like an accordion. They were floating downward as far as Rini could tell when a mechanical wheeze and bang came from underneath their feet, making her and Kabu jump. "Extending the legs," explained Lenore. As the dragonfly thumped down on something, she continued to stare at the readouts. "We'll just wait until the damn bird gets bored. They can't see you if you're not moving." Rini could not understand these people. They acted as though they were playing some sort of complex game. Perhaps they were. "Why do you have to do this?" she asked. Cullen snorted. "So it doesn't eat us? Now there's a real waste of time." "All clear," said Lenore. He circled off. "Give it another few seconds to be on the safe side, but I see nothing except empty skies." Shuddering, the wings beating hard, the dragonfly lifted off again. Cullen aimed it at the light once more, which flattened as they drew closer into the vertical wall of gleaming points. One rectangular spill of light grew larger and larger before them, until it revealed itself as a huge doorway that dwarfed the aircraft as they passed through. Cullen brought the dragonfly in neatly, hovered for a moment, then landed. "Top floor," he said. "Mandibles, chitinous exoskeletons, and ladies' lingerie, everyone out." Rini felt a sudden urge to smack him, but it diffused in the effort of dragging her tired body out of the crash belt and through the hatchway behind the two dragonfly pilots. Kabu followed her down, climbing slowly so as not to hurry her. The insect plane stood in a vast hangar whose outside door was just now sliding shut with a whine of hard-working gears. Rini thought of the military base in the Drakensbergs, and then had to remind herself that the base was real, but this place was not. Like all the Otherland simulations, it was incredibly lifelike, a high-ceilinged architectural monster constructed of, or appearing to be constructed of, fibramic tie girders, plasteel plates, and acres of fluorescent lighting. All the half-dozen Sims who trotted forward to begin servicing the dragonfly had individual and very realistic faces. She wondered if any of them represented real people. She suddenly realized she had no idea whether even their rescuers were real. "Come on," Lenore beckoned. "We'll debrief you. It shouldn't take long, although Angela may want to chat with you. Then we'll show you around." The hive, as Lenore kept calling it, was a huge installation built into a mound of forest earth. The mound, in comparison to the tiny humans, was even larger than the mountain containing the wasp's nest base, but Rini thought the whole thing still seemed an eerie parallel to their real-life situation. As they walked out of the landing bay into a long corridor, Lenore and Cullen in front arguing amiably, Kabu pacing on all fours beside her, she wondered again whether this was some kind of elaborate game world. "What exactly do you do here?" she asked. "Ah, we haven't told you, have we?" Lenore smiled. "Must seem pretty strange." "Bugs," said Cullen. "We do bugs." "Speak for yourself, Scan Man," said Lenore. "Me, I watch bugs." Kabu got up on his hind legs long enough to run his fingers along the wall, feeling the texture. "Is this a game, this place?" he asked, echoing Rini's earlier thought. "Serious as a heart attack," Cullen countered. "It may be a playground for Kunahara, but to us entomologists, it's like dying and going to heaven." "Now I'm really curious," said Rini, and surprisingly she was. The fear for her companion's safety had not disappeared, but Otherland had again caught her off guard. "Hang on a moment, and we'll give you the whole thing. Let's just get you some visitor passes, and then we can show you around properly." Rini, overwhelmed by the bustling realism, had expected Lenore to lead them to some office, but instead they were still standing in the middle of the corridor, where Lenore had opened a data window in mid-air, when a stocky woman suddenly materialized beside them. She had an extremely serious face, well-simulated Mediterranean features, and short brown hair. "Don't look so startled," she told Rini and Kabu. It almost sounded like a command. Here in the hive, we don't have to put up with all that realistic crap. As they pondered this confusing statement, she turned to Lenore. You wanted to talk to me about these people, right? We would have checked them in before we got here, but Cully almost ran us down a bird's throat on the way in, so it was a little distracting. You wish, was Cully's riposte. They wandered in from someone else's sim world? A Tasco, was it? Lenore turned to Rini for confirmation. And now they can't get offline. The new woman snorted. I hope you're getting enough water and glucose wherever you call home, sweetie, because we don't have much time to help you right at the moment. She turned back to the pilots. That Eceton front has swung around, and it's about 40 feet across when it's moving. I want you two to go and check it out again tomorrow morning. Aye, aye, Captain, Cullen saluted. Piss off. She returned her attention to Rini and Kabu, examining the latter with eyebrows arched. If I had time to waste on an old joke, I'd say we don't get many baboons here, but I don't have the time. I'm Angela Boniface. You two are a problem. We've got a very strict agreement with the leaseholder, and we're not supposed to bring anyone in without his approval. We don't want to be in your way, Rini said hurriedly. We leave as soon as we can. If you can take us to the nearest... She paused, unsure of the word. Border, I guess. We'll just get out. Not that easy. Angela Boniface squinted. Damn. Oh well, Quack, see if you can find someone around here who might be able to figure out what's gone wrong with their gear. I have to go kick Bellows' ass about something. Before she had turned halfway around, she was gone, vanished like a stage magician. Project administrator, said Lenore by way of explanation. What did she mean by that realistic crap? Asked Kabu. Even Rini had to smile at his inflection. She meant in here we don't have to pretend like it's a real world, Cullen explained, extending his long arms in a cat-like stretch. Kunahara doesn't want anything disturbing the natural look of the simulation. So, if we want to examine things up close, we have to interact, have to be part of the environment. But an unobtrusive part of the environment. That's why the vehicles look like big bugs. He set up all these other incredibly irritating rules we have to follow. It's kind of a little game he's got going, and he enjoys making us jump through the hoops. At least that's what I think. And when you earn your first billion or two, Lenore pointed out, you can build your own simulation, Cully. Then you can make the rules. Well, when I do, rule number 1 is going to be no 16-hour days for the boss. I'm going to take care of some notes, then I'm out of here. Sayonara. He flicked his fingers and disappeared. There really isn't any place to sleep, Lenore apologized as she left them in a conference room. I mean, no one bothers to do that here. Wouldn't make sense. She looked around at the empty space. Sorry it's so bare. I can put something on the walls if you want. Maybe make some more furniture? Rini shook her head. It's all right. Well, I'll come back to get you in a few hours. If any of the gearheads are available before then, I'll have them buzz you. She evaporated, leaving Rini and Kabu alone. What do you think? Kabu had clambered onto the featureless rectangular block that served as a table. Can we talk here? If you mean in real privacy, I doubt it. Rini frowned. It's a virtual conference room. This whole thing's just a visual interface for a multi-output communications machine. But do I think they're listening? Probably not. So you do not think these people are our enemies? Kabu crouched on his heels, brushing at the short hair on his legs. If so, they've gone to a lot of trouble for a very small chance of reward. No, I think they're just what they say they are. A bunch of university people and scientists working in an expensive simulation. Now the fellow who owns the place, whatever his name was, him I wouldn't be so sure about. She sighed and lowered herself to the floor, putting her back against the stark white wall. The jumpsuit her sim wore was only a little the worse for wear, despite immersion in the river, but it was within the bounds of what would really happen. It seemed these Otherland simulations even took note of wear and tear. Who were these people, this brotherhood, she wondered again? How could they build a network this realistic? Surely money alone, even in almost unimaginable amounts, was not enough to bring about this kind of performance level jump. So, what do we do? Kabu asked. Have we lost the others for good? I really don't have any answers. Bone-tired and depressed, Rini struggled to get a grip on her thoughts. We can wait and hope that Sellers finds us before any of those Grail people do. We can keep moving, keep looking for... What did Sellers say that man's name was? Kabu furrowed his simian brow in thought. Jonas, he said at last. Sellers spoke to him in dreams. He set him free, he said. Right, which tells us exactly nothing about where he might be. How are we supposed to find him anyway? Follow the river? Which could go for millions of miles through virtual space, for all we know. It could be some kind of Mobius river, for God's sake, and keep changing so that it has no end at all. You are unhappy, Kabu said. I do not think it is as bad as that. Look at this place. Remember the man at Tasco's country. There cannot be enough people in the world to construct 1,000,000 such complicated things as this. Rini smiled a tired smile. You are probably right. So that's it, is it? Back to the river and hope we find Martine and the rest, or this Jonas fellow? Have you ever heard the expression, a needle in a haystack? Kabu shook his narrow head. What is a haystack? Her dreams came and went, almost unnoticed, like early morning rain showers. She woke, curled on her side on the floor of the imaginary conference room, and listened to Kabu's gentle breathing beside her. A memory floated through. Only an image at first, an amalgam of sound and feeling. On cold mornings when he was small, Stephen would crawl into her bed. He would mumble drowsy nonsense for a moment, then curl himself against her, and within seconds drop back into deepest sleep, leaving Rini herself resignedly half awake and waiting for the alarm. It was terrible, the between state that Stephen was now in, this unresolved nothingness. At least her mother was gone for good, to be missed and mourned and occasionally blamed. Stephen was neither dead nor alive. Limbo. Nothing to be done about it. Nothing but this, perhaps, whatever this turned out to be, a hopeless search, a confused assault on incomprehensible powers. Rini could only wonder. But every moment that Stephen remained ill, and that she did not make him better, was a burning reproach. The pain summoned another memory. When he was 5 or 6, he had come home one afternoon full of agitation, flapping his arms as though he would fly. His wide-eyed upset had been so exaggerated that at first Rini had almost laughed despite herself until she noticed the blood on his lip and the dirt on his clothes. Some of the older children had waylaid him on his way back from school. They had tried to make him say something he didn't want to say, one of the tired rituals of malevolent youth, and they had shoved him down in the road. Without even pausing to wash his split lip, Rini had dashed out of the house. The little gang of 10-year-old thugs had scattered when they saw her coming, but one of them was a step too slow. Shouting with rage, Rini had shaken that boy until he was crying harder than Stephen. When she let him go, he slumped to the ground, staring at her in mortal terror, and she had been pierced by a deep shame. That she, a grown woman, a university student, should put such terror into any child. She had been horrified and still had never quite forgiven herself. Stephen, who had watched from the doorway, had no such compunctions. He was gleeful about the bully's punishment and did a little laughing dance as she returned to the house. How could someone set out systematically to injure children? What did these Grail Project people believe could be worth such monstrousness? It was beyond her comprehension. But then these days so many things were. Her contemplative mood turned sour. Rini grunted and sat up. Kabu made a quiet sound and rolled onto his other side. What could she do but go on? She had made mistakes, had done things she didn't like to remember, but Stephen had no one else. A life, a most important life, was in her hands. If she gave up, she would never see him run again in his skittery, gangly, graceful way. Never hear him chortle at the painfully stupid jokes on the net shows, or do any of the things that made him uniquely Stephen. Perhaps that bullying 10-year-old hadn't deserved such angry reprisal, but he had never bothered Stephen again. Someone always had to stand up for the weak and the innocent. If she didn't do all she could, she would spend the rest of her life beneath the shadow of failure. And then, even if Stephen died, he would always remain in limbo for her, a ghost of the most real sort, the ghost of a missed chance. Chapter 4, In the Puppet Factory. Netfeed News, Mini Elephants Not Just a Fad. Visual, Canon with miniature elephant Jimson. Voiceover, business is very good indeed for Good Things Farm these days. Owner Gloriana Cannon, shown here with young bull elephant Jimson, breeds and sells almost 100 of the mini elephants, sometimes affectionately known as half-a-lumps, every year. The business, which began as another mini pet fad a decade ago, has outlasted the experts' best guesses. Cannon. Part of it is because these little guys are so smart. They're not just novelties, they're real companions. But they're also a lot more stable than some of the other genetic minis. Their DNA just handles it better or something. Stop that, Jimson! When you remember how unpredictable those little grizzlies were, all those accidents they had, and those small jungle cats that turned out so nasty. What was that stupid marketing name? Ossolittles or Ossolite? Something like that? Dulcinea Anwin put her hand on the palm reader and noticed that her nails were ragged. She frowned, waiting for the door to decide to trust her. Too much to do. She must look dreadful, but at the moment life was even wilder and more overwhelming than usual. The last time I went through this door, I had never killed anyone. That thought, or others much like it, had been cropping up for days. She was pretty sure she was handling it well, but she had little with which to compare it. Still, she did not feel consumed by guilt. It would have been different, she supposed, if the victim had been someone she really knew instead of some minor Colombian gearhead Dredd had hired. Besides, she had seen this coming for years. You couldn't be successful in her business without coming into personal contact with violence, or at least you could not avoid it forever. Still, she had thought her first experience with murder would be watching someone else do it, not performing the act herself. She pushed the thought away again, but the memory of Antonio Celestino's sightless eyes both before and after the killing shot seemed unlikely to go away soon. The apartment door, unable to distinguish between the new Dulcie who had shot Celestino and the old Dulcie who had not, hissed open. When she had crossed the beam, the door paused exactly 1.5 seconds, then shut itself. Jones appeared in the bedroom doorway, stretched luxuriously, then padded across the floor toward her with no apparent haste, as though her mistress had not been gone for almost 2 weeks. Dulcie dropped her bag and leaned down to stroke the cat, who bumped her shin and then turned and sauntered away. Jones's fluffy backside, Persian wide but bearing the Siamese coloring of the other half of her heritage, showed no signs of unfashionable shrinkage. At least Charlie from downstairs seemed to have fed her properly. The wall screen was pulsing with a faint pink light, but Dulcie ignored it. She hadn't accessed any messages since boarding the flight in Cartagena, and she was in no hurry to do so. She felt as though she hadn't been properly cleaned for days, and God knew that she would be busy enough soon. "Priority message," said a soft male voice, cued by the front door opening and closing. "You have a priority message." Shit. Dulcie flipped her hair out of her eyes and rubbed her forehead. It couldn't be dread again already, could it? She felt positively waxy. "Play the message." Her current employer's ugly, handsome face appeared, a meter high on her wall screen, his long hair lank and damp. He looked like someone who had been chewing khat, exalted and buzzing like a downed power line. "Dulcie, call me as soon as you get in. It's extremely, extremely urgent." Oh, Christ, no peace. She told the screen to return the call, then slumped onto the couch and kicked off her shoes. He came on almost immediately. "We've got a problem." Didn't those subroutines work? She had cobbled together a few reaction loops before leaving Dredd to mine the fort in Colombia. Behavior gear that would allow them to leave their puppet sim untenanted for short stretches of time, but which would keep the imposter looking occupied and alive. Nothing that would confound serious scrutiny, but enough to get through sleeping periods and the occasional distraction on the handler's end of things. "It's all working fine, but the group's been split up. That African woman and a monkey friend, they're lost, maybe drowned. There was some kind of fish frenzy on the river. The boat tipped over and the rest of the group are stranded on shore." Dulcie took a deep breath, fortifying her patience. Men, no matter how intelligent or powerful, sometimes couldn't help acting like boys, so lost in their games that they forgot they were games. Women, on the other hand, remembered what was important: an occasional bath and clean hair. "But our sim is still with the rest of the group?" "Yes, everyone's together now except those two. But they're clearly in a dangerous situation, so we could lose them all at any time. I need to get on with researching some of the things they've already talked about. I can't do it while I'm handling the sim." Could this possibly just wait another hour? "I'm sure you're tired, but I just walked through the door and I have to eat something before I faint." Men didn't understand baths, but they usually understood food. He stared for a long moment. The look on his face seemed to suggest imminent violence, or at least harsh criticism, but then he grinned instead, his teeth bright in his dark face. "Of course," he said. "Sorry." Dulcie could make little sense of this man. His odd reactions, like this one, the flares of brilliance, the childishness of his nickname, did not quite add up to make a full picture. Not being able to categorize him irritated her. I really do need a chance," she began. "Call me back when you're ready." He broke contact. Dulcie looked down at Jones, who had returned and was sitting patiently by her stocking-clad feet. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," Dulcie told her. "Always hurrying." Jones lidded her round eyes. She seemed to agree that it was no way to do things properly. Her curling red hair was wrapped in... Oh, I should just stop there, actually, because then we've got next a longish scene that doesn't break up. So we'll stop there. Dulcie looked down at Jones. We'll pretend that I'm just reading this for the first time. Dulcie looked down at Jones, who had returned and was sitting patiently by her stocking-clad feet. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," Dulcie told her. "Always hurrying." Jones lidded her round eyes. She seemed to agree that it was no way to do things properly. Okay, and we're stopping there. So, that is where we will resume next week. Same TAD time, same TAD channel, as far as I know. I know of no reason why we shouldn't. With all of that said, I thank you. It's kind of fun to be back doing Otherland again. It's been so long. It's the one good thing about not reading one's own work is it's not that you forget anything in a larger sense, but it means that you don't necessarily always know where you are, and then suddenly a scene will happen or some character says something, go, oh, right, that's where we are, or that's what's going to happen next, or blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of interesting to reread one's own work, even if there is always a mote of self-doubt involved. Like, is it okay? Does it still work? Yeah, that kind of stuff. Anyway, so with all of this said, I am going to sign off for the night and for the weekend. I hope that you all will take very good care of yourselves, because that is the first thing, and you are important, not just to the people in your lives, but just important, period. Take good care of your friends and loved ones. Keep an eye out for those around you who might need a little help. Helping hand, kind word, couple of bucks, whatever it might be, just a listening ear. Meanwhile, I will return next week. Until then, peace be upon you. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon. Ciao, ragazzi.